Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the virtual public meeting for state project number 151-331, the reconstruction of Interstate 84, Route 8 interchange, also known as the Mixmaster in Waterbury, Connecticut. So before we jump into our main meeting content, we have some preliminary slides to guide you through and to help ensure an accessible meeting experience from start to finish for all attendees. So as you see here, we are providing audio translations for this meeting in both Spanish and Portuguese. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you will be able to see the interpretation tool. You can click the interpretation tool and then select the audio translation you would like. You can select either Spanish or Portuguese. And now we will receive the translation in Spanish.
Buenas tardes. Entonces, si quieren empezar a escuchar el audio en español, tienen que ir al icono que representa un globo y ahí puede la opción de español. Ese globo se encuentra en la parte inferior del menú.
Thank you. And now in Portuguese.
Boa tarde a todos. Então, nesses slides aqui tem as instruções para escutar o áudio, traduções. Tem tradução de áudio em espanhol e português disponível para esta reunião ao vivo pelo Zoom. E número 1, clicar em ferramenta de interpretação, que é o globo, no parte inferior do menu. E número 2, selecionar a tradução de áudio que você queira. Esta reunião oferece tradução de áudio ao vivo em espanhol ou português. Obrigado.
Thank you. Also, if you are on your mobile, the interpretation tool can be accessed by clicking the More button. The interpretation can be accessed by clicking the More button. And can we hear that translation in Spanish?
The channels have been activated.
Okay, and next. So we are also offering closed captioning for this meeting. If you go to the bottom of your screen, you can see the closed caption tool. Then you will click select our speaking language and then select the language that you would like to receive the closed captioning in on your right. Also note that the closed captioning, including non-English translation options, will be available on the YouTube channel after the event. Also regarding Title VI and your civil rights, no person shall, on the basis of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project. You can fill out a post-meeting survey to let us know how we did by scanning this QR code here. You can also get more civil rights information at the address located here on your screen. Also, a recording of this presentation will be posted to CONDOT's YouTube channel after the event. And again, we're offering closed captioning, including non-English translation options available on Zoom and then via the YouTube channel after the event. The Connecticut Department of Transportation operates its programs and services without regard to race, color, and national origin in accordance with the Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. Any person who believes she or he has been aggrieved by an unlawful discriminatory practice under Title VI may file a complaint with CONDOT. For more information on CONDOT's civil rights program and the procedures to file a complaint, you can reach out to the Title VI coordinator at 860-594-2169 or at deborah.goss@ct.gov. We also have this slide in Spanish. We'll take a couple of moments here. Move on. Right. During this meeting, we will have a question and answer session. Please note that you will not be able to post any questions in the chat. The chat function will not be enabled for attendees to post comments. Any of your comments or questions should be posted in the question and answer tab. This tab will be open throughout the meeting, and we will get to answer your questions during the question and answer session. Please note again that the Zoom Q&A will only be answered during the question and answer session. Also note that you will be able to raise your hand during the question and answer session, in which we will unmute you so that you can be able to ask your questions or make your comments. Also, following this meeting, you'll be able to reach out to the New Mix team by email at thenewmixwaterbury@gmail.com, or also contact us by phone at 203-759-8742. You can also access our comment form on our project webpage, which is newmixwaterbury.com. You can also access our comment form by scanning the QR code here on your screen. Or you can also access it by visiting bit.ly/comments new mix. Please note that the comment period will be open through April 16th, 2025. So we'd like to introduce you to the project team for the New Mix program. Nilesh Patel is the principal engineer from CONDOT. Also, Jonathan Dean, project manager. Ed Sabrin, project engineer. Joe Belrose, project engineer, and Shannon Burham, public involvement manager for CONDOT. And now we have the HNTB team, headed by Jake Argiro, project manager, David Schweitzer, deputy project manager, Chris Fagan, project engineer, Naomi Hodges, environmental lead, Katie Tice, urban design lead, and myself, the public outreach lead. So here's the agenda for our meeting this afternoon. First, we will provide an overview of the New Mix program, then go into the Pell study overview, in which we will unveil the range of reasonable alternatives that will be moving on for further evaluation, the New Mix program timeline, looking ahead into the next steps, and then also the question and answer session, which I'm sure you've all been waiting for. So now we will go into the New Mix program overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Next slide. All right, so what is the New Mix? The New Mix is planning for the long-term future of the Mixmaster when it reaches the end of its serviceable lifespan. The New Mix Planning and Environmental Linkages Study, which will be referred to as the PEL or the PEL study throughout the rest of the presentation, analyze rehabilitation and replacement options that can be implemented by the year 2045 and will modernize the interchange, improve safety and functionality of the roadways, improve function of the local road network and the interchange, reduce congestion, improve air quality, and align with the economic development goals and community plans. Next slide. So why is the New Mix project needed? The New Mix program is needed because the existing interchange is aging and various structural components are reaching the end of their serviceable lifespan. A recent rehabilitation project has extended the lifespan to about the year 2045. However, the stacked structures cause repairs to be costly, lengthy, and extremely disruptive to traffic flow, which is raising the need for a long-term solution. Also, from a vehicle operations and safety perspective, there are many aspects of the interchange that could be improved, such as narrow shoulders, the distance between interchange ramps, and left side exits. Those could all benefit from improvement and have been evaluated as part of this study. For these reasons, the Connecticut Department of Transportation has undertaken this PEL study. Next slide. And I will now hand it over to David Schweitzer to discuss the PEL study in more detail.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. Next slide, please. The Planning Environmental Linkages Study, or the PEL study, is an FHWA process that's been approved by them. What this does is this allows the design team, which is not just engineers, it's also urban designers, planners, environmentalists, public involvement specialists are included within that design team. What it allows is a collaborative early stage analysis that integrates the transportation planning environmental consideration to streamline project development and decision making. So in the upper right-hand corner of this slide, you can see our study area that is outlined with the blue perimeter. This includes I-84 from roughly exit 17 through exit 23, and along Route 8 from the former exit 30 to exit 35, or in the present day from exit 29 to exit 31. And this is not just the main lines and their connections, but it's also the local roadway network, including the arterials and collectors in the city of Waterbury on that local roadway network. So the rough schedule, if we go along the bottom of the slide, our Pell study is being completed now. We've identified our range of reasonable alternatives. From here, the project will go to the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, where there would be further analysis of this range of reasonable alternatives, and we'll come out with a preferred alternative. From this, it will go to the design and permitting, and then ultimately to construction, where we're looking at anticipated completion in the year 2045. Next slide, please. These are the 6 steps of the Pell study process. You will see this ribbon along the top of the slides as we go forward and touch on each one of these steps. So as we go to the next slide, the first process that the design team faced was defining the problem that we're trying to solve. And this could be transportation issues, whether they be structural, geometric, or operational. We also got to be able, as a design team, to investigate and collect data. So where the traffic team would take the existing traffic data and be able to project this out to our design year of 2045, whether it be the existing condition in that year or one of the range of reasonable alternatives in that year. We're also able to look at multimodal aspects, other community aspects, and environmental context features. And all of these findings are documented in our detailed analysis needs and deficiency report, which is available on the NewMix website for review. The next step in this process was having the vision for this Pell study. So what this vision statement is Conduit desires to establish a vision or master plan for the interchange that addresses and balances the regional importance of the Mixmaster for commuter traffic and motor freight users, while also improving multimodal services, local connections, and livability within the city of Waterbury to enhance and support social equity and economic vitality. So with this charge, we moved into developing our purpose and need and our goals and objectives. So the purpose and need is really looking at what really needs to be done with this interchange. It's very engineering based. And what we found is there were structural deficiencies, geometric deficiencies, and also operational deficiencies. Then you have the part that is the goals and objectives, or the intended outcomes that you want to have from this project. And these are kind of divided into technical aspects, which is a little bit more refined from our purpose and needs for the project, and then also very specific to the city of Waterbury on their intended outcomes. You will see that some of these are to improve the system performance and air quality by reducing congestion, maintaining critical system linkages, facilitate connectivity and equitable mobility through the local road and multimodal network, and to reduce crash rate and improve safety. Also, you can look at some of our intended outcomes were to provide connections to the Naugatuck River and the proposed greenway. We wanted to improve access to downtown and key destinations. And we also wanted to integrate the project with ongoing city projects, whether it be, including the Central Business District or the Freight Street District. Now, one thing, if you look at that bottom ribbon, one thing that was very important throughout this was the public input, whether this was from public meetings such as this, from our project advisory committee, or from meeting with neighborhood groups or other stakeholders or with agencies. And what this allowed us to do is we gathered that input to help influence these intended outcomes, or it was something that the design team saw and we had it confirmed by the public. So after establishing this purpose and need and our goals and objectives, we worked towards developing our evaluation criteria and the conceptual alternatives. So as we go to the next slide, I'm going to start out with the conceptual alternatives that we came up with. And what this starts with is a universe of alternatives or potential solutions for the long-term future of the Mixmaster. And this is broken into 4 broad categories. The first category being the no-build alternative or no action, and then see how that operates in the year 2045. I'm going to skip to the bottom, and we looked at other travel modes, which could include transit, such as the trains or the BRT, a bus rapid transit, to see if this solved the purpose and need that we had identified for the project. Now, we didn't find that these travel modes did solve the purpose and need for the project, but one thing they did do is they did provide some complementary features that can be carried through with these other alternatives, such as rehabilitation alternatives that were developed or the replacement alternatives that we did develop. Now, when we developed our evaluation criteria, these were based off of that purpose and need and the goals and objectives. So as we get into evaluating and screening the alternatives, which we're going to next, I will talk a little bit more about this evaluation criteria. How we screened our universe of alternatives, we did it in 3 levels. Our first level is really an evaluation of fatal flaws. And these are engineering based and they're based off of that purpose and need. So is an alternative going to satisfy our structural deficiencies that were identified, the geometric deficiencies, and the operational deficiencies? If an alternative did not satisfy these 3 fatal flaws, that alternative was screened out. So through level 1, we had passed 9 alternatives. Our level 2 analysis is more of a qualitative analysis on those goals and objectives or those intended outcomes, where we quantitatively scored these alternatives based on that criteria we developed on those goals and objectives. And in this stage, 2 of those alternatives passed this level and moved down to level 3, where again, we looked at our goals and objectives and we analyzed these alternatives on how, what the impacts were of these alternatives and the mitigation opportunities that we could identify. Now, another piece that took place during this level 3 was our mobility equity analysis took place. Just our 2 alternatives that we had identified that had passed level 2, both passed level 3 and became our range of reasonable alternatives. Now, one other thing that's very important to realize on this is, I know I spoke before about that public involvement, but this became very important to us. You can see this carried consistently throughout this whole process and the screening. And what we were able to develop from this, if we go to the next slide, is the last step, which is our Pell Study final report. And what that does is that documents everything that was accomplished through the Pell Study, including the results. It's going to summarize the range of reasonable alternatives that are advancing into NEPA, and it identifies the next steps, which are program funding and phasing, project-specific determinations, and the Pell questionnaire. So now we'll get to revealing our range of reasonable alternatives, which starts on the next slide. And before I get into looking specifically at these slides, a few things I do want to point out about both of these alternatives. They're both full system interchanges with right-hand on and off system ramps. I-84 will be unstacked and built to the south of the existing viaduct. I-84 being unstacked will be at the elevation of existing I-84 westbound. Route 8 will be unstacked to the south where it is a stacked viaduct presently. Service interchanges will move to the perimeter to improve interchange spacing and improve traffic flow through the interchange, but we will include new frontage roads in the east-west direction that will parallel I-84, and they will start at either Jackson or Meadow and carry as far east as South Main Street. We will improve the north-south frontage roads, which include presently today, it's Charles and South Leonard, moving up to Riverside as we move northerly into Watertown Avenue. And the local roadway network will benefit from the frontage roads, as these will be complete streets providing access under the railroad that parallels Meadow Street on the west side. So if we look here at this slide of what we're calling the modern crossover interchange, you can see we are to the south, approximately at probably pretty close to Bank Street, and we're looking north. You can see existing Route 8 on the left side with the Riverside Cemetery Chapel there. In the background, as you follow Naugatuck River up, you can see Waterbury Hospital. And then in the upper right corner, you can see the clock tower. So at the modern crossover interchange, you can see from this view from the south looking towards 84, you can see Route 8 has been placed on the east side of the Naugatuck River and then is brought back across to the west side as it goes under 84, so that we're going to match up with existing Route 8 on the west side of the Naugatuck River and avoid that Freight Street district. As we carry across to the center and right columns, you can see that on the existing conditions, you can see some service ramps and also multiple levels of structure as you look, that is Bank Street on the far right. As you look down at what the modern crossover interchange is going to do, you can see how it opens up as that service interchange is taken away from downtown. And then also in the lower right, you can see how there are less levels and less structure in the downtown area. Now, as we move to the next slide, which is the second of the range of reasonable alternatives, or the Naugatuck River shift, I want to focus on the center and right columns. You can see how this is very similar to the modern crossover interchange. It will remove those service interchanges. And by service interchange, I mean one that comes off a main line and goes down to a local road. And it'll also clean up those levels of different structures at varying levels as you look at that picture of Bank Street looking north. But if we go to the left side of this, if we go to the left side of this, again, we have that same picture of the existing conditions. And what you can see with this, if you go to the lower left, is you can see that Route 8 is kept on the west side of the Naugatuck River. But in order to improve and gather enough space to build Route 8 as an unstacked limited access highway, we need to shift the Naugatuck River to the east. So now if we go to the last slide, this is going to show the modern crossover interchange and the Naugatuck River shift on top of each other. So here you can see the major difference between these alternatives. It's the location of where Route 8 is south of I-84. With the modern crossover interchange, both bounds are built onto the east side, and they're built once. And you can see how area opens up on the west side of going alongside Riverside Street. With the Naugatuck River shift at the bottom, you can see one thing that has to take place here is we need to overbuild to maintain traffic on the northbound leg, while then we can remove the existing stacked viaduct of Route 8 and then build the southbound barrel as that comes towards us. As I talked before about the frontage road systems, there's a slight difference here with them, with the modern crossover interchange. The east-west frontage roads will begin at Jackson Street and carry east. There will be a fifth crossing of the Naugatuck River in this area. It'll be an extension of Sunnyside Avenue that will carry through to Jackson Street, where those frontage roads will begin. With the Naugatuck River shift, this extension of Sunnyside Avenue will need to carry all the way to Meadow Street, and then the frontage roads will begin at Meadow Street and carry east. In both of these options, there will be access underneath the railroads, which will be providing quicker or better access to that area where the Freight Street District is and where Jackson Street is shown. So that's the area located between the Naugatuck River and the existing railroads that parallel Meadow Street. The last difference that between these is really the I-84 eastbound access to downtown with the modern crossover interchange. This comes in down in at Jackson Street and then gets right into the frontage road system. With the Naugatuck River shift, this becomes an access that needs to braid underneath I-84 and comes in at Meadow Street and then accesses the frontage road system. So those are the differences between these three that are visible when they're looked at in an overall plan view. One thing that is consistent through all of these are the urban design and planning features, which I'm going to turn to my colleague, Katie Tice, to walk you through those.
Thanks. So the reconstruction of the interchange and its associated access roads provides an opportunity to improve transportation safety and mobility for multiple modes of transportation. This means vehicles, bicycles, pedestrians, etc. So these goals are documented in our Pell report as part of our purpose and need. So there's a series of tools that we can utilize so that non-motorized travelers are considered equally important and welcome mode of transportation. So as shown on the screen here, this includes special paving along sidewalks or in crosswalks. This is similar to what you see over at East Main Street, the Streetscape Improvement Project. There's mid-block crossings, which depending on land uses nearby or the length of the block where pedestrians are walking can really help formalize desire lines and where people and pedestrians want to go. That can also calm traffic and has drivers on alert to slow down their speeds. And there's also refuge islands, just safe spot to wait in case you cross late in a pedestrian cycle or you can't make it across the street in one cycle. And we also want to think about this project as an opportunity to activate the corridors or activate the street life. Waterbury has a really vibrant downtown, and we think that can be further enhanced. So while we reconstruct access roads, exit configurations, we have the opportunity to think about that street life. We can have widened sidewalks. You see here in that image on the right, so we can have widened sidewalks and public right-of-way that allows for a more active street life. Think street cafes that invite people to stay, enjoy the restaurants, enjoy a cup of coffee, enhanced lighting, furnishing, wayfinding, and that all can kind of be branded to have that sense of place that represents Waterbury. And we can add additional cycle tracks, protected bike lanes that connect with the existing lane on Freight Street, and that begins to formulate a network that will make biking a more desired option. And also spaces like this can have green infrastructure, which provides that buffer between the sidewalk zone and the roadway zone. So it's a little planted buffer, but it can clean water, remove runoff from the stormwater system. So these are just some tools. On the next slide, continuing with that idea of sense of place and knowing when you are in Waterbury, we also see this project as an opportunity to provide a gateway into the city. For instance, as you drive on 84 east or west, you could see up ahead of you an art installation on Highland or South Elm that lets a user know that you are now entered into Waterbury. And knowing that without even reading a sign. This is a great example nearby, the Beehive Bridge in New Britain, Connecticut, shown on the lower right here. This is a really feasible possibility, and an added benefit of creating a gateway is the opportunity to engage local artists in kind of symbolizing what it means to be in Waterbury. And lastly, on the next slide, as we continue to think about gateway experiences as well as non-motorized travel, we could improve the experience in underpasses. As they are rebuilt, once again, they can be widened to have expanded sidewalks that are ADA accessible. We can have bike lanes, and also shown here, unique art installations, murals and lighting that welcome pedestrians and bicyclists, and once again, create that visual presence of being in Waterbury. Some examples on the screen are where these sort of idea has been installed in California and in Colorado. Okay, and now we're going to run a video simulation of what a reconstructed new mix may look and feel like.
All right, so I'll provide a little narration here. We're coming down aerial on Waterbury, and we're going to be looking west, back across I-84. And as we come down, that's South Elm Street right in front of us. And then you have the Our Lady of Lourdes Church off to the right side, and you can see these frontage roads that are paralleling I-84 at the local level. The clock tower there is off to the right side. One thing I do want to point out at that green is a bike path or bikeway. And as we drive down here, as we're looking at existing features, you can also see ghosted out buildings where there's a chance for more development here in Waterbury. This is based off the modern crossover interchange. So here's we come in at Bank Street and carry across that intersection. Now we're going to start to elevate. You still see the clock tower and the Freight Street development in the foreground. And as we pan to the south, we're going to be driving along the Jackson Street corridor, which was developed recently by the City of Waterbury through the water program. And again, you can see the bike paths both on the west and east sides of the river, with the Riverside Cemetery Chapel there on the left side, and the access to the Naugatuck River. And now as we go down and follow along Jackson Street, you can see this sidewalk in the green areas carrying under Route 8. And the intersection that we are coming up on is actually the off-ramp or the I-84 eastbound access to downtown. The eastbound frontage road begins on the right side. As we go underneath the proposed I-84, eastbound then westbound, seeing they are both at one level as they are unstacked. We'll be coming up at the intersection. This is the westbound frontage road coming in on the right side. And to the left side will be the Sunnyside Avenue extension, which will duck back under I-84, plus one of the system ramps going over the top. That's one that connects I-84 to Route 8. And here we have a fifth bridge that's going over the Naugatuck River at the local roadway network. And it's going to come in at the intersection of Sunnyside Avenue with Riverside Street is the roadway that is going left to right here.
All right, thank you, David. So the new mix improvements demonstrated by the visualization that we just watched would be implemented through a series of projects. Breakout projects are standalone projects identified during the Pell study. They have independent utility and can be implemented on a separate timeline from the long-term project. And the long-term project includes the reconstruction of I-84 and the Route 8 interchange core and the system connections between the two highways. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yep. Looking at the new mix timeline, this public meeting series is marking the completion of the Pell study process. The project will next enter the pre-notice of intent and the NEPA phase, where the range of reasonable alternatives will go through a federal environmental review process with the goal of selecting a preferred alternative. This is roughly a 3-year process. Following the NEPA phase, the preferred alternative would enter a design phase, followed by construction. Multiple design and construction phases are anticipated to help maintain traffic during construction. The design phases are anticipated to begin in the year 2028. And breakout projects, which are the standalone projects identified during the Pell study, will continue to be developed and implemented on a timeline independent from the long-term project. Next slide. And that brings us to our question and answer session. So to enter a question, you can use the Zoom Q&A box. You can see a graphic of that to the right side of the screen. The Zoom Q&A is only available during our live Q&A session, so there will be a recording of this meeting, at which point the Zoom Q&A button will not be active. You can also raise your hand, and we will, if you want to verbalize your comment, and we can call on you so that you may ask your question. Following this meeting, you can always contact the New Mix team by email at thenewmixwaterbury@gmail.com or by phone at 203-759-8742 or on our project webpage and comment form at newmixwaterbury.com, or you can scan the QR code on the screen here to visit the website and leave a comment. And please note that our comment period is open through April 16th, 2025, though you can always enter a comment or question through our website. And we're waiting for some questions to come in.
Ed, there's also an opportunity tomorrow. We have our second open house, which will be a live event at the the Multnomah Interdistrict Magnet School, and that's from 5:30 to 7:30 tomorrow evening.
We do have one question that came through. They're wanting to know if we can review the Exit 18 changes to the New Mix project.
Yep, we can address that. I'll start off that conceptual designs are still being investigated. The goal for the Exit 18 area is to provide increased distance between the ramps on 84, but it's also an opportunity for improvements on the secondary roadways that the exits connect to. So right now we're looking at many different options, being sensitive to any property impacts, trying to avoid any property impacts, any acquisitions, and designs are continuing to be developed. There will be continued opportunities for public input to discuss more specifics as they're available as the project development progresses and we have specifics on the area.
anyone has any questions, you can raise your hand now, or you can also enter your question into the question and answer tool at the bottom of your screen. Looks like
we
we have
have
another question coming through. We have another question.
the
Could you
question. Are you going to read it, Kimberly?
explain?
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead. Could you explain what a breakout project is in more detail and clarify what it means to be standalone? Also, have there been any breakout projects that have been started or completed already?
Yep. So we could actually hop back a couple slides, but the breakout projects are of a relatively smaller scale compared to the long-term project. They could be designed and constructed in a shorter duration. It helps provide a benefit to a localized area while the larger project is still being studied and designed. Referred to as standalone because they can be designed and constructed independent from the larger project and will have independent benefits regardless of which option moves forward with the long-term interchange project. An example would be the removal of exit 21 eastbound off-ramp. It's a breakout project. Temporary condition is in place now, and the permanent removal is currently in the design phase.
Thank you. Thank you for the feedback, Jane, on the video. We're glad that you enjoyed the video and that it was helpful. There was a comment that came through that the video was very helpful, the flyover video. Thank you, Jane.
So you can always raise your hand if you have any comments as well. It's easier to verbalize it instead of type it in the chat. And another,
Also, as David mentioned earlier, there are additional opportunities to connect with the New Mix team. We have our final open house for the Pell Study tomorrow at Maloney Interdistrict Magnet School. You can pop in anytime between 5:30 and 7:30 to check out our various stations on the project, and also to be able to ask any questions of the project team live at the open house. There's also opportunities to win a $25 Visa gift card. And also we're featuring a 3D model of the modern crossover interchange created by Caner Tech students, or a portion of the modern crossover interchange. So definitely come out and visit us tomorrow. We'd love to see you at our open house tomorrow. Okay, we have some more questions coming through. One moment. Okay, so the next question is, what changes are being made to Freight Street?
I think we have somebody jumping in to discuss Freight Street.
Thank you,
Sorry.
David.
I was just searching for buttons there, Ed. Yeah. With the Freight Street district itself and Freight Street east of the river, there will be no impacts to that area and the development that the city wants to do. There will be, depending on the alternative, in the, as it gets closer to 84, there will be some minor impacts down in that corner in order to carry forward with the frontage roads or an access ramp that'll be coming through there. An important aspect, Freight Street is serviced by, it used to be exit 32. I believe it's exit 30C now. And seeing this is with both alternatives, it's contained within the core of the interchange. One thing we're looking to do is we are developing what's known as a peanut roundabout. So it's two roundabouts that are kind of connected like a figure 8. So on the left side of this, we can have access. It'll be left-hand entrance and left-hand exits off of Route 8 in both the northbound, southbound direction to provide access to the Freight Street District from Route 8. And then on the right side of that peanut roundabout, the local roadways will carry through on that side. So you will have access from Freight Street to Route 8, northbound, southbound, both getting on and getting off, and being able to access the Freight Street District and downtown from there.
Thank you, David. Also, I want to note that I am about to post in the webinar chat the link to the Contact Us webpage on our New Mix website. So you can be able to leave your comments through following the instructions on the website as well. So we have another comment that's coming through.
All right, looks like we have another comment.
Yes.
Paul Belgamba, City of Water is one alternative preferred over the other. So at this stage in the process, we have the two options moving forward into the NEPA phase, where we'll take a more in-depth look at both options and assess the impacts and benefits that each option will have. The NEPA process will allow for more public and stakeholder input, which will continue to help inform what a preferred alternative will be at the conclusion of the NEPA phase. The feedback that we receive can continue to influence the design of the project, but there is no true preferred at this time. So more opportunities for public input to come and to influence.
Yeah, just want to add that was great. As we move forward into that NEPA phase, there will be continued chances for public input, and certainly we've been working with the City of Waterbury, NVCOG, the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments, and our project advisory committee, which is made up of various stakeholders, both in community-based organizations, local residents, city and regional officials, and all that work is going to continue on into NEPA. So although we are wrapping up the Pell study here, there will certainly be much more that we have to determine as the project moves forward, and especially what elements some of these urban design elements that we talked about, would really love input from the community, local officials about their vision, how they want to see connections to the river, Freight Street, and other vital connections that we can make in the city.
Any other questions? You can raise your hand if you have any questions, or also type it into the Q&A tool. Okay, we have another question. How will the alternatives impact access to the downtown area?
So an important piece of information that we found during our traffic study is that about a third of all the traffic on the highways is people moving around the city using the highways, using Interstate 84 and Route 8. And these shorter trips cause a lot of the congestion that's on the highway. So consolidation of ramps to reduce the number of entrances and exits within the city is a strategy that was used. The proposed frontage roads that are running parallel to I-84 that you saw in the visualization will help to relieve congestion and move people within the city a little bit better, and then also help create the connections to I-84 and to Route 8. And should be mentioned, these would also be complete streets as well, not just vehicle-centric for moving vehicles, but also accommodate bicyclists, pedestrians, and transit users. Additionally, another crossing of the Naugatuck River on the local road network at Sunnyside Ave is a pretty big improvement that could be made to the downtown area for mobility.
Thank you, Ed. It looks like we have another question that came through. Oh, wait 1 second. Yes. So how has the funding been approved? And if so, what are the sources of funding?
So, well, I can take that question. As of now, funding has been identified for our next phase, which is obviously, as I mentioned, right, going into the NEPA phase, doing the environmental review, and also some of the engineering that's going to be required to support that. But we have not identified funding going forward in terms of design and eventually right-of-way phases and construction, but that's part of the process as we go through and take a look at the reasonable range of alternatives and as we go through that and see what that looks like in terms of funding. But we'll continue to try and identify future phases within our 5-year capital plan and even going forward in terms of applying for any federal grant programs that come out that the projects will be eligible for.
Thank you. I also want to let everyone know that I am posting now the post-meeting survey link. So if you can click on that link and let us know how we did with the meeting, how we can be able to provide you with, continue to provide information in a way that is accessible and in a way that you prefer moving forward. So if you could fill out the post-meeting survey link, let us know how we did in this meeting. We'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much.